between lives that are going to be tortured. We were at one of our protection centers. Protection center is a safe house, but with extra security because there's still a bounty or a price on these girls' head, so they can't testify. Then I walk into one of the counseling rooms, and it's a counseling room for really young girls with toys and teddy bears on the couches, children's books there. And I walk up to the couch, and right behind the couch, there's a window. You could look out, and right behind the window, there's a wall. And on top of the wall, there's razor wire all the way around. And I'm looking at this picture, and it's a surreal picture because I'm envisioning the girls that are here and what they're going through, but I'm standing there and I'm getting emotional, and one of our team members comes up and he whispers in my ear as I'm looking at this picture, "It's such a thin line between tortured and treasured." And tonight you're that thin line. You're that thin line between lives that are going to be tortured or lives that are going to be treated the way they should as God's treasure. But what type of line are we really going to be?
Tortured or treasured? Tortured or treasured? Tim Tebow said it. It's a thin line, just the width of a razor wire fence between horror and hope, between being silenced and being restored, between a life that is tortured and a life that is known as treasured. I want to talk to you today about that thin line, because I have lived on both sides of it. And for a long time, I did not even know that the other side existed. Have you ever been in a burning building? And how many of us have? Or at least in a crisis so consuming, a divorce, the death of a loved one, anything so overwhelming that all you could do was just survive, that you couldn't look and see, you couldn't stop long enough to look and see and check on the people next to you, that you could not even see what was happening around you because every single thing that you were doing was trying to get out yourself, just trying to breathe, trying to make it to the next moment without being swallowed by the fire or the circumstance. That is what living inside unrecognized abuse is actually like. You are on fire, but you don't even know you are on fire. You just know that something is wrong and that everything hurts and that survival is taking everything that you have. And in that state, in that consumed, depleted, running on empty, running on nothing state, you cannot see the people around you clearly. You can't see what the fire is doing to yourself or to them. You can't protect them from it because you don't even know the name of what is for what it is. If you knew there was a fire and you had been given a fire drill to use so that you knew what to do, then you and those around you would have a fighting chance to get out. I was in that burning building for a great part of my own life. And this episode is going to be hard because I have come to realize that for most of my children's growing up years, until my children were 10, 12, and 14, none of us knew we were even in a fire. I did not see it. And unfortunately, the hardest thing I have ever had to admit is that I did not see them. Not the way a mother should see her children. Not the way they needed to be seen. I was so consumed with surviving my own abuse, that I did not even know what I had been or what I was surviving. And until something is named as abuse, you can't fight it, you can't escape it, you can only endure it. And that is what I did until the fire had nearly consumed me completely. I can remember feeling myself literally dying inside. My story, and maybe yours too, is like what happens on an airplane when the cabin pressure drops and the oxygen masks come down, and every flight attendant will tell you the same thing. Put your own mask on first. Not because you do not love the people sitting next to you, but because if you pass out trying to save them, you cannot save anyone. I had to get the oxygen mask on myself first. I used to feel so guilty about that. But I had to get rescued before I could reach them. I had to begin to breathe before I could help them see the fire that they were in. And just like all of us, the way survival works, the denial is there for a reason. Until the denial lifts, they have to realize it for themselves, that they have been in a fire, that they have been abused, and be able to process it for themselves. By the time I got out, and I had every intention of getting my children out with me, a judge decided to have my children live with one of the people that kept the fire burning. I lost custody of them for 2 years until they became children in need of assistance. The irony is that they were already children in need of assistance. A broken system kept my children in a burning building. By the time I began to understand what I had been living with, by the time I had enough healing to lift my eyes and really look around me, the damage had already passed down. My children had already been shaped by what they had watched, by what they had been shown, by what was done to them, by what I modeled, by what I did not do, every bit as much as what was done to them. It takes getting out of the fire to realize you were even in one. And it takes your own rescue mission being underway before you can even begin to see the hell that the people you love most have been living in right beside you. That is not an excuse. That is just the truth of how this works. And the truth is what sets us free. I am an overcomer and an advocate. Welcome to Arise and Shine podcast, by the way. I speak for survivors. I write songs and a blog for survivors. And today, I need to tell you something about myself that is one of the hardest things I have ever said out loud. I didn't know I was a survivor for most of my adult life. I did not know that what happened to me as a child was abuse. All of it was blocked out, buried somewhere so deep that I walked through the first decades of my life, my marriage, my motherhood, carrying a wound I could not see and I didn't have a name for. When my father died, I had been married about 10 or 11 years to my first husband. When my dad died, something started to crack open, and I started to feel. Memories began to surface. Things that did not fit the story that I knew about myself. I spent the next 5 years going to a support group, a little bit of therapy, working through some of the things, not the childhood things yet. I didn't have enough self-worth, but I finally realized the marriage I was in was never good. I recognized it for what it was, abusive. I could finally believe for the first time that I deserved something better, and so did my children. And I left him, and I had every intention of getting my children to come with me. The memories of my trafficking did not come until much later. They came after God put Frank, my husband, that I have been married to for 32 years in my life. He was the one that showed me what love actually looks like. He treated me with a gentleness and a steadiness I had never experienced from a man, much less anyone. And through Frank, something in me began to understand that a father's love, a man's love, feels similar. Through that, God became something different to me than he had ever been before. Not a doctrine or a religion, not just a set of rules. A Father in heaven who actually saw me and called me a treasure. The trafficking memories came after that foundation was in place, because I think God is a merciful God. He does not give us what we cannot yet hold or handle. What I passed down without knowing. Here is what I need you to understand. This is how abuse travels. This is how it passes down. I did not walk into my first marriage knowing I had been abused and trafficked as a child. I walked into it carrying the weight of what I didn't even have a name for. What I did carry and that I felt was utter worthlessness. I felt like I was nothing. I carried shame so deep, I didn't even recognize it as shame. It was just the water I swam in. It was just who I was. A person who was not worth much. I couldn't tell you why. A person who did not deserve to have her needs met. A person who stayed pretty quiet, kept the peace, absorbed whatever came my way, because that was what I was trained to do. I cried on my wedding day. I knew deep down that this was not what love was. I never loved him. He never loved me. I was pregnant. I even told his friend, Danny, that I did not want to marry him. But I did not believe I could make it on my own. I didn't believe I deserved any better. And so I went into that marriage already on that tortured side of the wire that Tim spoke about. Already convinced, not even knowing what treasured was. Not for somebody like me. I did love my children with everything that I had in me. I even tried to give them more love to make up for what they weren't getting from their father. He was emotionally and physically gone pretty much every day, not just to work, but hunting, fishing, racing, working on his truck, his cars, spending money on himself. While I did all the cooking and the cleaning, the raising of the children, all of it alone. I tried to make up for what was missing by loving them harder. But here's the truth that took me many years to be able to say. No one can make up for what the other parent lacks. And in staying and absorbing and never naming what was happening as wrong, and never defending myself or my children, I was modeling something that my children watched and learned every day. I was showing them, without my words, that this is what love looks like. That the people who are supposed to love you get to ignore you and use you and leave you every day without ever walking out the door. That your feelings are an inconvenience. That your needs do not matter. That you stay I was on the tortured side of the wire, and so were they. And I did not know there was another side for myself or for my children. And so I could not show my children the way to it. This is one of the most painful things I have ever had to face. That my own wound, unhealed and unnamed, became the lens through which my children learned what they were worth. Not because I did not love them, but because I had never been taught that I was worth protecting. And you cannot give what you aren't given. There is a father wound. I want to talk about something that I believe is at the very root of all of this. I do not think you can fully know that you are treasured, that God loves you, until you have experienced what a father's love is supposed to feel like. I truly believe that because the word father gets filled in early, long before you ever open a Bible, long before anyone tells you that God is love or God is your father. Your own father fills in that word first. And whatever he put there is what you carry into everything that comes after, like a marriage. If what your father filled that word with was rage or anger, or absence or control, or the kind of silence that says you do not matter enough for me to show up, then when someone tells you God is your father, or that God loves you, your heart already knows what that means. And it is not safe. It is not being treasured. It is something to just survive, and maybe something to just put up with. Well, Frank showed me something different. He wasn't my father, but for the first time in my life, a man treated me with love that did not have any strings or any cost attached to it. Trafficking teaches you that there's a cost to being loved or to be shown any love, even though that's not what love is. Frank taught me that love did not disappear when I was inconvenient. Love that saw me and stayed. That's what he taught me. And through that, I began to understand, really understand, in my bones, deep down in my soul, not just in my head, that I was lovable, that I had always been lovable, that God had always seen me as beautiful and treasured, even when every person and every circumstance in my life had told me that all I deserved was to be tortured. That is the thin line that Tim Tebow was talking about. And for some of us, that line runs right through the middle of our own story. Maybe you also have run right through the middle. Maybe you also believed that your purpose was to be tortured. What we believe is what we teach others. It's not only what we teach others, but what we teach others to do to us. I have come to believe with everything in me that statement: if you believe you are worth nothing, you will accept nothing. If you believe you are worth nothing, and that your life will just include torture and abuse, that is what you will get. from every person in your life. And you won't even know why. You'll just think there must be something wrong with me. If you believe you deserve to be ignored, people will ignore you, and it will feel normal. If you believe that love means endurance without any limits, you will endure things that were never meant to be endured. Not because you are weak, not because of anything else, but this. Because that is what you were taught. Go back to the burning building. In school, we're taught by having fire drills. What a fire is, how to get out of it. Firemen are trained. They're taught what to do in a fire. We put up with torture. We don't know we're treasured because this is what we are taught. Because someone, somewhere filled in your understanding of what you were worth before you were old enough to have words for it or to question it. We talk so much about what abusers do, and we need to, but we do not talk enough about what happens inside the person being abused, about how that wound convinces you that you deserve the wound, that you deserve the abuse. That is the most insidious part of all of it. The lie that says this is just what life is for someone like me, for someone like you. Until you know you are treasured, you will live like you deserve to be tortured and abused. Even when no one is actively hurting you anymore, you will find your way back to the familiar. You will accept what confirms what you already believe about yourself, that you are worthless. You will accept what confirms what you already believe about yourself. I needed to say that again. And this is the hard part that I'm learning and dealing with. You will pass that belief down to your children without ever saying those words. It will happen. It does happen. When we feel worthless, when we have not been treasured, we pass that same belief down to our children because I did not defend myself. I did not protect myself. I couldn't as a child. But then I did not defend my children either. I did not protect them from the abuse. This is the truth. And I'm not saying it as a way to be too hard on myself because I know why. I was trained, I was taught that this is what you do. And if you have been abused, so were you. There was no choice to do anything different. There was no training to teach us how to do anything different. I want to read something that I came across today. My husband showed this to me from a magazine. If you really want to do something different, you will find a way. If you don't, you will find an excuse. Author unknown. Here's another one. Same day, same magazine. The greatest discovery of any generation is that people can alter their lives by altering their attitude. But you have to learn different, right? I want to add to that quote, the second one. People can achieve greater things in their lives by changing the trajectory of how the previous generations lived. I wanted better for myself. I wanted better for my children. I chose to do different. I learned how to do different. And I chose to make a difference in other people's lives. And in time, to show my children that there is something different, but to be there for them when they could choose something different. And yes, by the time I understood enough to show my children something different, the damage had already been done. The effects of abuse are multi-generational. I know that. I have lived that. I have seen that play out. I have watched it. But I also want to tell you what else I have lived and watched. I have watched my children decide to heal. Slowly and perfectly, like all of us, not in a straight line, but I have seen it happen. I have watched my children make choices that are different from the ones they were handed. I'm so proud of them. I have watched them look at their own children, my grandchildren, and decide that the line stops with them, as well as I made that decision that it stops with me. It's a struggle. We don't do it perfectly, but the decision is being made. The direction is changing, and I believe with everything in me that the healing that I chose, even when it came late, even when it came in pieces and it was messy, and even when it came after the damage had already moved to the next generation, healing is traveling forward now. God's grace moves through generations, just like the multi-generational abuse does. And I am seeing it and watching it move forward. Tim Tebow stood inside a protection center and talked about razor wire, about the thin line between tortured and treasured, about lives that could go either way, depending on whether someone showed up and stood in that gap. I want to say that the razor wire is not only around a building somewhere, it runs through families. It runs through generations. It ran through mine. And for a long time, I did not know I was on the wrong side of it. I was not standing in the gap for my children or for myself. I was passing the wire down to them because I had never been shown there was another side being treasured. But I am here today because I chose healing, and I am still choosing it for myself, for my children, for my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren. I have lived to see my children choosing it. I have chosen to listen to my children and to support them and love them as they learn that they are treasured. I showed them a different way. I showed them what it looks like to stop taking orders, to stop being controlled, to stop allowing people to own you. I showed them what it looks like when you can become the person that God created you to be. I was woman enough to tell them that I am sorry. that I wasn't able to defend them or protect them. Because what I did not do was every bit as damaging and harmful as what abuse did do. And that is the thin line made real in this family's story. Being a role model for teaching them by my example that I and they deserve to be treasured. After learning it for myself, only then could I teach them that they too deserve to be treasured. If you are listening to this and you are a mother and you recognize yourself in what I have said today, or a father, I want you to hear this. You are not too late. The healing you do will still reach your children. It still reaches their children. It is never too late to cross from tortured to treasured, to that other side of the wire and say, I am treasured. My children are treasured. You always were. You can choose to say, I will start by living today, that it is not too late to tell them by your example that they are treasured too. And if you are someone who never had a father who showed you what safe love felt like, I want to say, I found that it is true, and you can find out that truth too. There is a father who has been able to see you on that treasured side. He never once wanted you to be tortured. He has always seen you as his, and he wants you to know that you are treasured too. If there was something in this podcast that touched you, please share it with someone else. There is hope and healing no matter what abuse has done to you or your children. And there is a Father in heaven who wants to be your father and let you know that he treasures you. Thank you for watching Arise and Shine. This is Sharri.